And now to the fintech and money segment of our program today. Over the next hour, we're going to hear from some of the most innovative and disruptive companies shaping the future of finance, both in Asia Pacific and beyond. For starters, a company that is creating a global data exchange by turning data into tradable commodities. Here to talk about a marketplace where users can share or sell data on their own terms. Can you please welcome Datum CEO and co-founder Roger Haney. Roger.
Hi, good morning everyone. So my name's Roger Haney, I'm the CEO of Datum, and I want to talk about data to you today, and more specifically about the new data economy that we're trying to build. So all of us create a lot of data every day, a staggering 2.5 quintillion bytes. But this data is not used very efficiently. It goes into large data silos that are controlled by large companies and organizations, and there's lots of knowledge and value locked in these data silos. And of course, we all heard about the Cambridge Analytica Facebook case. But originally, the psychological survey that was used to collect this data was actually developed to discover PTSD in US veterans. And they were actually very successful in doing that. And then only later someone else, or Cambridge Analytica, realized, hey, hang on, so we can use this data for other purposes, more evil purposes. And of course, what's happening now is that Facebook is pulling away access from developers to do these kind of things, so the researchers that want to help the veterans can't do this anymore as well. So the big question is, what is actually really the value of this data? And how much is the value for your data specifically? And how can you take advantage of it? So I'd like you to think about something. How much do you think your location data of 1 month is worth? So all the places that you visit in 1 month, your home, your work, any shops and restaurants you visit, just think of a number. And the other thing is, think about how much your email address is worth. So when you sign up to an email newsletter, and more specifically, just receiving one single email and opening that. So we have actual data from our app that we built and from a live marketplace where advertisers are paying for these types of data. And the astonishing thing is that your location data is worth almost nothing. You may think that that is very sensitive data, but it's already collected at a very large scale, and it's essentially raw data. It's not directly actionable. However, receiving one email in our marketplace, advertisers pay up to $10 US to you as an individual for just opening one email and reading their marketing message. So when we talk about data, there is always a value chain. It starts with raw data, but the real value happens usually at the end of the chain, when you can take action on data or when you can get insights on this data. And so we're trying to build a system where we can reward all the stakeholders along this value chain. So what are we trying to build? It's a public infrastructure to store data. That is the first part. You have to put this data somewhere, and this data store should not be controlled by Facebook or Google or anyone else. It should be controlled by you. The other part is, how do you then exchange and trade this data? How do you attach value to data? How do you define data? And how do you hand over and how do you handle the payments for data? So what we are building includes your self-sovereign identity, which means it's an account that you own. It's not a Facebook account, it's not a Google account that they can disable and shut down at any time, that governments can access from the backside, that hackers can get into. And to this digital identity that you control, various data claims can be attached, giving you full ownership of this data. The second thing is, we're building this database where all the data is encrypted with your private keys. So your privacy is guaranteed, it's censorship resistant, and it's open to anyone. So you decide who gets access to your data, which developers can use your data to provide services to you, or which advertisers you want to allow to target you. And you maybe say, okay, I don't want to be targeted for political advertisement, So that's fine, and that should be respected. And the last part is the data exchange. So once the data is stored, it needs to be exchanged. And in the advertisement world, there's many, many middlemen at the moment that take this location data, for example, and aggregate it and refine it and use it for targeting audiences and basically make this data more valuable. And all of these middlemen take a little cut. And so in our platform, we allow developers and publishers to return value directly to you as a data source, as an individual. But depending on the use case, we also allow them to return a percentage of the data sales proceeds to various intermediaries that may validate the data, analyze the data, aggregate the data. So how do we actually do this? What have we actually built? So at the very core, we are solving a simple pain point that any blockchain developer, any developer that is building decentralized apps has. And that is, how do I store large amounts of data on the blockchain? And with most blockchains, you can't. The amount of data that you can store is extremely limited. So we built an off-chain database storage network that is still decentralized. It's not owned by anyone. We don't run it. We don't store your data. Instead, it's people like you and me that run our software on their machines and get rewarded with our cryptocurrency, our token, for providing resources to the network. So this is like an alternative to an AWS cloud database, but there is no AWS that runs it. It's like Bitcoin. Once it's up and running, you can't really stop it anymore. Then the other important part is the encryption piece. So all the data that goes in is encrypted with your private key. And that means you have full control over this data. You know exactly what is going on. And we use a blockchain layer to provide this immutable log file where you can go at any time and see, okay, who actually has access to my data at this time? You can remove access at any time. And because we don't store the data on the actual blockchain itself, you can, of course, delete data at any time as well. And the last part then is the purchasing of data. So the token or cryptocurrency is really great to actually do microtransactions and to basically turn any asset or tokenize any asset. And the same thing goes with data. So by using tokens, we can actually reward you for data that gets sold, but also anyone in between in the value chain. So that's what we do. And but I like to talk a bit more broadly about blockchain and the cryptocurrency market. And something that's pretty dear to my heart is this fact that a lot of the market cap is driven by tokens at the moment. Utility tokens, security tokens, and so on. A lot of the value is based on speculation and future expectations that, okay, these companies will build large ecosystems and the tokens or the cryptocurrency will be worth a lot. But I believe we have to start looking at the fundamental values of these networks. And so I find it very interesting that if you look at normal startups, they're basically mostly black boxes, right? You have to ask them and trust them about the data they give you. So you may ask them, okay, what's your monthly, your MAU, how many users do you have, what's your growth rate? And they give you some data, and you can do some due diligence, but you don't really know. Now, the great thing with blockchain and decentralized apps is that the smart contracts that sit on the blockchain provide you full transparency of what's actually happening in these decentralized apps. And a good example is CryptoKitties, which you may have heard about, which is arguably has been the killer use case so far for Ethereum outside of simply doing payments. But if you look at this data, it's very interesting because you can exactly see how many users have used CryptoKitties, when was CryptoKitties actually hot, and is it still hot now? And yeah, so I think we need to start looking more at the fundamental values. And the great thing is really that all this data is out there. If you go online and Google CryptoKitties, charts or statistics, you will find a lot of data. And I think this is pretty revolutionary, that you don't have to trust companies anymore to basically give you data, which is also always a little bit made up in many cases. But instead, you can actually look on the blockchain and you can get exact amounts of how many users do they have. And even more detailed, what functions are people calling in those smart contracts? So how are they interacting with these platforms? So I believe we need to start looking at these new metrics, and I believe that's what's driving the future value in the cryptocurrency market. So away from speculation, looking at actual traction of companies and utilizing all this data that's out there. So remember, the data never lies, sometimes. So please check out our app.datum.org. We launched this a few months ago. It's a technical showcase. We didn't really expect to have many users on it, but we acquired over 60,000 users that transacted over 150,000 US dollar worth of data transactions on our platform already, and over 20 advertisers and companies purchased this data. And so this is just the beginning, and if you're a developer, please check out developers.datum.org. Our SDK is live, and you can build a marketplace for your user base and help them make money from the data that you collect on them using our SDK just the same way we do it for ourselves. Thanks, everyone.